Oh boy, did the NFL coaching carousel take a fun new twist and turn yesterday, mainly in Big D. He is Joe Raineri. I am Ben Stevens. It's one of the beautiful things about this time in the NFL calendar. 14 teams reached and earned a playoff spot in the NFL. Now, a couple of those teams have been eliminated. 6, in fact. We are on to the divisional round. 8 teams left standing in the chase for a Super Bowl championship. The 18 teams that missed out on the postseason are already focusing on the future of their franchise. And in Dallas, Joe, it really came down to today. It's when Mike McCarthy's current contract expires and he would be a free agent. We knew that was going to be the case. But it seemed as though in the last week, after the Cowboys denied the Bears permission to interview Mike McCarthy, and we had some further reports that maybe, just maybe, the Dallas locker room and Jerry Jones was starting to believe that Mike McCarthy would be there for 2025 and beyond, and a new deal might be reached. Nope, not the case yesterday. The two sides agreeing to part ways is how they are putting it. NFL Network's Tom Pelissero reporting that the two sides could not agree on a contract length of this new deal. Regardless, for Mike McCarthy, he is now a coaching free agent, and the Cowboys now need a new head man. Joe, what did you make of this process? And maybe better yet, the timeline that led to the decision ultimately in Dallas that Mike McCarthy would not return as the head coach for next season?
It's a dumpster fire. I just don't know how else to put it, where everybody before the season, the minute that McCarthy did not have an extension, they didn't work out a new contract, he was basically a lame duck coach, and everyone thought, it's just a matter of time before he's fired here. But the other problem is that they set him up to fail. I mean, they spent an NFL $20 million in free agency, just $20 million since the end of last year. So they didn't invest in the roster outside of the draft. They didn't invest in Mike McCarthy as the head coach because they let him hang around all season long, Ben, wondering if and the players wondering, is this guy even still going to be here? You basically set him up to fail. And how it took you that long to figure out that he wasn't the guy or that you wanted to move on, it screams that there is something going on in the hierarchy here at Dallas that is not right here. And if you're not going to invest from the top down, starting with the head coach and giving him some say and some power, I don't know who in their right mind wants to take this job right now here, Ben?
The issue is only one person. It's the ego of Jerry Jones. He wants to be in control. He wants to be the loudest man in the room, which makes what we're going to say in just a little bit about any coaching replacements in Dallas all that much more confounding. But, Joe, the writing was on the wall, not this January, not in November, not in September, not in July, not in March, last January, after another Dallas disaster in the postseason. Winning the NFC East for a second time in 3 years, being a touchdown favorite at home against a Packers quarterback in Jordan Love, who had yet to make his postseason debut, and you got beat bad in your own home building. And in response, Jerry Jones did not give his head coach a vote of confidence. Jerry Jones did not give his head coach a contract extension. Jerry Jones said, you will be on the warmest of warm seats the NFL or maybe any coaching circle has ever seen. We are not going to renew your contract, which means, as Joe alluded to, Mike McCarthy was a lame duck this season. Because, Joe, we all understood entering this year that success in Dallas is judged by Super Bowl championships. And the Cowboys have failed to win a Lombardi trophy since their last one in 1995. In fact, including last season, 13 playoff trips in the last 3 decades or so around the National Football League, where the Cowboys have reached the playoffs and not even gone past the divisional round to play in a conference championship, let alone a Super Bowl. So that would be the standard, right? Could Mike McCarthy get Dallas back to the postseason? Sure. But would he lead them to a playoff run? If no, he would not be the head coach. Joe, they didn't even get there. They were 7-10. Oh, Ben, Dak Prescott got injured. Did you see the Cowboys with Dak on the field? It was even worse than with Cooper Rush out there. So why this took so long to make this ultimate determination is ridiculous. But it's what Jerry Jones does. He believes he is the smartest man that has ever walked into every single room, more focused on his acting career than on actually leading the Dallas Cowboys to football success. They could offer me $5 million. Now, I was going to say they could offer me $5 million to be the head coach of the Cowboys, and I would say, yeah, because that's awesome. But if I'm a head coach, I'm not trying to go to Dallas right now. It is not a system that is set up for success by any means. And we saw this with Jerry Jones, not just in his head coaching decision and what happened here with Mike McCarthy, but waiting until the 11th hour to pay Dak Prescott and then making him the highest paid player in NFL history. Waiting until the final hour to pay CeeDee Lamb, making him one of the highest paid players not at the quarterback position in NFL history. There's more pay stubs to be had this offseason. Looking at you, Micah Parsons, this Dallas franchise right now is a disaster. We heard from Troy Aikman, a Super Bowl winning quarterback with the Cowboys, saying that he does not consider it a desirable location for any successful head coach. Joe, this Dallas team and this organization run by the Jones family is a disaster, flat out.
Well, it's run by Jerry. It's not necessary because I don't think the kids are on the same page with Dad here either. But listen, the single most successful period in Jerry Jones's career owning the Dallas Cowboys was when he stepped aside and let his head coach handle the roster, have a say on what personnel was going to be. That was Jimmy Johnson. And ever since then, this is what you've gotten from the Dallas Cowboys.
No doubt about it. We'll talk further about the Cowboys situation up next, live right here on the Early Line. Live right here on the Early Line on Sports Grid. 6 current head coaching vacancies around the National Football League. In the latest to be added, the Dallas Cowboys parting ways with Mike McCarthy. Better yet, not reaching a new contract. McCarthy, a free agent. We'll talk about his prospects in just a matter of moments. But now the focus is on the Dallas Cowboys. Right as we got to the Monday Night Football finale of Wild Card Weekend between the Rams and the Vikings, this report from Fox's Jordan Schultz. Cowboys owner Jerry Jones has spoken with Colorado head coach and former Cowboy, of course, Deion Sanders about the team's head coaching vacancies. And discussions are expected to continue regarding the possibility of him becoming the next coach in Dallas. And then we heard from Deion Sanders, who was reached out for comment by ESPN's Adam Schefter. Sanders, late last night, quote, "To hear from Jerry Jones is truly delightful, and it is intriguing. I love Jerry and believe in Jerry. After you hang up and process it and think about it, it's intriguing. But I love Boulder, and everything there is about our team, the coaches, our student body, and the community," end quote. That's a lot of coach speak for Deion Sanders to say, I don't know, sounds kind of fun, and that maybe I'm considering it. Joe, let's start with the feasible nature of this getting done. Would it make sense for either side, the Cowboys or Coach Prime, to have them work out a partnership and deal for Deion Sanders to become the next head coach of the Dallas Cowboys?
So the last time the Cowboys were actually relevant and were considered champions was when Deion Sanders was there in 1995. And I'll reference it again. The head coach at that time was Jimmy Johnson. And do you know who the most powerful man in that building was? It was Jimmy Johnson, not Jerry Jones. And I don't think he wants anything to do with that. I think it's great for Deion because Deion loves the publicity, right? He will parlay all of this talk about him to the Cowboys. He'll end up getting a couple of more recruits. Listen, nobody knows how to play the game, the PR game, like Deion does. But the reality is Deion has stated many times, the only interest in the NFL, any NFL job he would have, is if he could coach his sons. And Shiloh is getting ready, I think, to play the East-West game. He's a defensive back. And we know that Shedeur is going to be taken. The Cowboys have the 12th pick. They're not going to get Shedeur Sanders. They might get Shiloh, but they're not going to get Shedeur. I just don't see it happening. I think this is all about the PR, and nobody plays it better than Deion Sanders does. I think Belichick has a better shot at leaving North Carolina to take the job than Deion does of leaving Colorado.
I would agree with that. We got reports early yesterday after we learned Mike McCarthy would not be returning to the Cowboys that Bill Belichick would have been interested if he knew that this would have become available. He still could know that it's available and be in the running. Joe, I don't know if Deion Sanders is truly intrigued by the Cowboys opening. What I will say, I don't believe it makes sense for either. Deion Sanders is a master motivator. Deion Sanders, because of his aura, is a great recruiter in the way that he is building his program at Colorado. Listen, I was skeptical that Coach Prime would figure it out in Boulder. He certainly has. Even, I think, without his son, Shedeur Shiloh, or the guy he considers a son in the Heisman winner in Travis Hunter. I actually believe that Deion Sanders has staying power at CU, or maybe in other spots in college football, to build a program his way and see near immediate success. Before Deion Sanders, Colorado won a single game in 2023, won 9 this past year in 2024, and earned an Alamo Bowl bid. I also do not believe it makes any sense or is even remotely realistic for the Cowboys. We just bemoaned how Jerry Jones does not want to let up control. Deion Sanders is a larger personality even than that of Jerry. He doesn't want to do this to be a flashy, newsy hire. He doesn't need to do this to bring a spotlight on the star. And he certainly does not want to have the second biggest ego, deservedly so, in the room. To me, it makes zero sense for the Cowboys, both from a football success standpoint or just in the way that Jerry Jones has kind of built his franchises in the last 2 decades or so since their last Super Bowl championship in 1995. More of the coaching carousel in hour 2 starts now. We welcome you to hour number 2 live right here on this Tuesday on the early line on Sports Grid and all across that Spiz Grizz network. He is Joe Raineri. I am Ben Stevens. 2 more hours to go up until 11 a.m. Eastern time. And here is the plan for hour number 2. A little bit more in the NFL head coaching carousel. Only 6 vacancies now, even with the addition of the Cowboys because of what the Patriots did over the weekend in the signing of Mike Vrabel to be New England's new head coach. We'll hear from the new skipper of the Patriots in just a moment. Introduced yesterday, once again, a reintroduction, if you will, in Foxborough. And then from there, the updated playoff picture as we get ready for one of the best weekends of football each and every season, the divisional round of the NFL postseason. What things look like in the NFC. The odds outlook to contend for a conference crown. Same story in the AFC as well. Now that wild card weekend is in the books, we are on to round number 2, Joe Raineri, in the NFL postseason.
Yeah, and I spent all day yesterday going over the win totals that were just released for Major League Baseball. So yes, Ben, it's a cycle, and it just keeps welcome to our world. There's one sport closes, college football, another sport opens up, and here we go.
Yep, absolutely the case. So, Joe, as we know, even in the NFL, as 8 teams contend for a Super Bowl championship on the divisional round, we've got a ton of teams already focusing on the future of their franchises. And that includes the New England Patriots, who on Sunday morning, as we learned, had officially signed Mike Vrabel. Pretends to be shocked. Everybody knew that was going to be the case in a sham of a search for New England. It was always Vrabel. It was probably Vrabel back in early December. Here was Mike Vrabel reintroduced to everybody up in Foxborough yesterday.
Well, I think that the ability to have open dialogue with Robert and Jonathan was something that was critical. Elliot and his staff obviously what I believe and what everybody else believes is a young, dynamic quarterback. We have some youth on the roster. We have some veteran players that have kind of seen both sides of it and understand, and that will help me and will help our players, get back to that success and understand how hard it is.
A 3-time Super Bowl winning linebacker in New England who coached early in his coaching career under Bill Belichick before taking the Titans head coaching job back in 2018. 6 seasons for Mike Vrabel, Joe, in Nashville. A winning record, 54-45, even after 2 consecutive losing seasons in 2022 and 2023. It kind of seems like Robert Kraft is arresting him there. I understand he was getting his jacket for the Patriots Hall of Fame put on. But even after 2 losing seasons, Joe, in 2022 and 23, Vrabel still ends his 6 years in Tennessee 9 games above 500 with multiple playoff wins to show for it as well with the Titans. And things went south quickly in Tennessee. 2021, they were the 1 seed in the AFC playoff picture, ousted early in that postseason run. 2022, the AFC South favorites with Ryan Tannehill and Derrick Henry off to a 7-3 start. Then they lost 7 consecutive games to end out the season, allowing Jacksonville to win the division. 2023, a remotely competitive team, but of course not good enough at 6-11. But when he was fired by the Titans, Joe, even at the end of last year, it was rather stunning around the NFL. So he was a hot commodity, of course, for this coaching search. He ends up back in New England, a former Patriot who knows the Patriot way. And as you heard Vrabel discuss right there, there's a lot of building blocks in place in Foxborough that are attractive to a new head coach.
So I was at that game last October, I believe it was, or 2 Octobers ago, where Vrabel was on a bye week. The Patriots were playing the Buffalo Bills at Foxborough, and he showed up for the halftime show, Ben, and came out. Now, this is a NFL head coach of a different franchise, an organization, and I have never heard anything like what the fan base went absolutely bonkers when he was out on the field and he got inducted into the Patriots Hall of Fame. This was a no-brainer hire for them, but it's the way they went about it that a lot of people are scratching their head. I don't think anybody ever thought this wasn't happening the minute he became a free agent. But I'm very shocked that Kraft went with, Gerard Mayo as fast as he did without really giving Vrabel a nod. But as it works out, you end up getting the guy you probably should have had the entire time. And now we'll see what he does with it.
A scapegoat kind of in Gerard Mayo to be that buffer, if you will, between the end of nearly 2.5 decades of Bill Belichick to just turn things over to another former Belichick player, an assistant and Super Bowl champion linebacker in Mike Vrabel. Exactly what Gerard Mayo was, by the way, and now Vrabel steps in. There's a lot of people around the NFL angry at New England for a sham of a search, bringing in guys like Pep Hamilton and Byron Leftwich to almost mock the Rooney Rule and trying to at least have the opportunity for minority head coaches to get a look. I think Mike Vrabel had signed the contract behind closed doors, Joe, back in December. I think they knew, the Patriots in the Kraft family knew that was the plan well before the regular season finale. And I think if you ever heard transparently from Gerard Mayo in a tell-all, he would tell you, yeah, man, I knew what my future was in Foxborough. It's why I went out there and told Joe Milton to go sling it so we could cost the New England franchise an opportunity of drafting first overall. Regardless, the Patriots have the future of the franchise at the quarterback spot, at least for now, in Drake May. They have over $130 million of cap space this year to bolster up a roster that needs many different spots to be filled, and they have the 4th overall pick as well. Again, there's a lot to like for this Patriots team, trying to now undo 2 consecutive years of 4-win seasons and get back to the standard of success they well know in New England. Plenty more to be decided in that coaching carousel. 6 head coaching vacancies around the NFL. And oh, by the way, for Mike McCarthy, a lot of some steam right now, if you will, that the Chicago Bears could be interested in McCarthy and now don't need the Cowboys' permission to interview not only a former Cowboys head coach, but former Super Bowl winning head coach with the Green Bay Packers. A lot of people believing and speculating that McCarthy, in the way that he runs organizations, would actually be incredibly beneficial for the young Caleb Williams. That's the coaching carousel. Yep. Any other updates that we know, we'll bring you a little bit later on. But, Joe, as we look at the postseason, we are on to round number 2. We are on to the divisional round around the NFL postseason. And the final spot that needed to be booked in the NFL's Final 8 was last night. The Rams winning outright, of course, as a 2.5-point dog against Minnesota. The Rams will head to Philadelphia, 3 p.m. Eastern, Sunday afternoon. That a 5.5-point spread in favor of the Birds. The first game in the NFC, the 1 seed back in the mix on Saturday night. It's the Detroit Lions at home against the Commanders. The Lions booked as an 8.5-point favorite, largest spread that we will see in the divisional round. And, Joe, really where we are right now with the final 4 teams on this side of the league, the NFC odds are basically what we expected. A 2-team race in an NFC championship game we all anticipate. The Lions and the Eagles in the Motor City next Sunday.
Yeah, listen, I think we've got some interesting matchups in this one. I think we've got some interesting 2 teams led by defense, 2 teams led by offense. This is going to be very interesting coming up this weekend, Ben.
No doubt about it, Joe. So we'll go through all 4 divisional round matchups here in this second hour, game by game, to look at the early lines next. In this second hour live right here on the early line, we go game by game. Our 4 divisional round matchups around the National Football League into round number 2 around the NFL postseason. Again, this is one of the best weekends of football each and every season. Quality teams in quality games with huge and significant stakes, trying to play in a conference championship, win said conference title, and of course appear in a Super Bowl. Joe, let's start with the game on Sunday. That was finalized yesterday. It will be in Philadelphia. The Eagles now know who they will be hosting. That is the LA Rams. Projected hypothetical odds for this matchup did see LA as a 6.5-point dog in Philadelphia if they were able to outlast Minnesota last night. But the Rams looked rather dominant in doing so. So now the line is 5.5 on the FanDuel Sportsbook with a total of 43 and a hook. And Joe, let's start with the total. We did not see a ton of points throughout the opening round of the NFL playoffs. Only 1 of 6 games pushed to the over. It was our highest scoring game, the first of the weekend in Houston, and it featured 44 combined points. And these 2 defenses, a big reason why. The Eagles held the Packers to only 10. The Rams held the Vikings to only 9. How important will defense be Sunday afternoon at the Link?
Well, I think it's also worth noting that the Eagles had the best defense in the NFL in the second half of the season, Ben. They, too, started off very slow under Vic Fangio, and you and I talked about it early on. And we said, listen, Vic Fangio, there's a learning curve. When Vic Fangio takes over defenses, it is not just a plug-and-play kind of situation there. Takes guys a little getting used to, but as we can see, they drafted well. Free agency worked out well. Hassan Reddick really didn't matter all that much. And voila, the Eagles, by the time they made the turn to the second half of the year, they had the best defense in the NFL. And we saw this very young Rams defense get better and better as the season progressed. And it's funny, that seems to be a theme here, don't we? Because we can say the same thing about the Ravens defense. The teams that even Washington's defense, who was getting torched early on, every one of the teams that remain had a slow start defensively and figured it out and got better as the season progressed. I think this one, I'm going to be very interested to see where this line goes, Ben. Does this line go to 6.5? Does it touch 7 at any particular point? The total kind of still hovering right around here, but a quick look at the weather Ben, for this game. What is it, a heat wave by you guys? 43 degrees is what it's supposed to be at kickoff there in Philly. Now, the Rams going outdoors. There's some things to consider there. I don't know that the total's going to move all that much, but I'm going to be very interested to see if this line comes anywhere close to 7 when it's all said and done.
The Rams on a shorter week, still a ton to deal with back home in Los Angeles. The Eagles very comfortable at home for a second consecutive week, and with a full week of rest, having dispatched the Packers on Sunday afternoon. Yes, it is cold right now in the Northeast, but supposed to be rather pleasant this weekend, at least for mid-January standards. There is no doubt about that. Now, as for the line itself, again, the projected hypothetical odds, Philly a 6.5-point favorite. It's now 5 and a hook. Could it get back to near a touchdown? I wouldn't be surprised. The Eagles, Joe, both of these teams, you could say, got off the lackluster starts, one worse than the other. The Rams started 1-5, the Eagles 2-2. Since that even 500 2-2 start for Philadelphia, they have won 13 of 14, including, of course, the double-digit win over Green Bay on Sunday. Philly has covered 10 times in those 14 wins. They have gone under 9 times in those 14 games as well because they have just been so stout on the defensive side of the football. But as for the Rams, Joe, what a season it has been once again. A Rams team last year that started 3-6, won 6 of their last 8 to earn a playoff spot. A Rams team this year that started 1-4 due to a litany of injuries really all across the board, won 9 of their next 11 to clinch a divisional title in the NFC West by the time we were done with week 17. And since week number 5, the Rams with Matthew Stafford as their starter have been an underdog only 5 times. They have won outright 4 times in that 5-game underdog span. The only non-cover and non-outright win, a Sunday night football game in SoFi where the Eagles looked dominant, winning 37-20 in a much higher scoring affair, Joe, than we anticipate for Sunday afternoon in the city of brotherly love.
Yeah, the story is going to be, obviously, we got to figure out what the weather is going to be. Stafford having to travel east on a short week in the cold. That's not exactly been great for him over the years. But I will remind everyone, he did go to MetLife and beat the. Oh no, okay, so that really, we probably shouldn't take that into consideration, Ben, because I'm fairly certain we could have done that here. But even more importantly, I love the fact that they came out. We'll have to see what's going on with Higbee. I understand he stayed the night in the hospital there after the game in Arizona. But for the most part, they are healthy heading into Philadelphia, which I think is huge for the Rams.
And it was a critical game, Joe, for L.A. way back in Week 14 against Buffalo. At the time, when the Rams outlasted the Bills in a very offensive affair, 44-42, L.A. winning outright as a slight home dog. It was the highest scoring game of the NFL season. It was surpassed just a couple of weeks later. But, Joe, I bring that up because they allowed Buffalo 42 points. Josh Allen could not be stopped. He had 3 passing touchdowns and 3 rushing scores. You were left thinking, does this young LA defense have what it takes, even if they are to earn a playoff bid? Well, in the 3 games fully healthy with all their starters in there, the rest of the regular season, weeks 15 through 17, 9 points, 6 points, 9 points, and then, Joe, in a playoff game against the Vikings, only allowing 9. This Rams defense looks a very, very different tune in the last month or so. That's the first game in the NFC on Sunday afternoon. Now Saturday night in Detroit next. Live right here on the Early Line, our divisional round preview by looking at those early lines on a show that is aptly named Continues. And we go to Saturday night in the Motor City. The 1 seed in the NFC for the first time ever in franchise history. The Detroit Lions will welcome in the Washington Commanders. Joe, last year when the Lions won the NFC North, winning a divisional crown for the first time in 3 decades in the NFL, which meant that Detroit would host a playoff game for the first time in 30 years. Just that in itself was a celebration. when the Lions outlasted the Rams on Wild Card Weekend, winning a playoff game for the first time in 32 years. In itself, that was a celebration, an almost unheard of SOL. Same old Lions, no more in the Motor City. This year, though, things are very different. It's not just enough to win a division or even be the 1 seed or even have a home playoff game or even celebrate that inside Ford Field as an 8.5-point favorite. It's about winning this one, the next one, and making even more franchise history. Playing in a Super Bowl for the first time ever in Lions organizational history. And as you see there, it is a hefty spread, at least for Detroit, to host the NFC Championship game a weekend following. 8.5-point number in favor of the Lions against the Commanders, a total of 55 and a hook, the highest total for divisional round weekend. Joe, it's north of a touchdown. It's 8.5 points live on the FanDuel Sportsbook as I see it. Is it too many points, though, in favor of the Lions against Jaden Daniels in Washington?
The question is, Ben, is if it's going to stay at 8.5, and I think this line will continue to rise here a little bit. That's a prime teaser opportunity with Detroit here. So if you haven't done it and you can still get it, might not be a bad idea to get Detroit under a field goal here. Listen, they're healthier. They're playing at home. They have the experience. They're taking on a rookie quarterback who, listen, congratulations. They did what they had to do to beat Tampa, but I can make the argument that Tampa beat Tampa in that game there. So, and I give Dan Quinn and this defense a lot of credit. They were awful to begin with, but they figured some things out and have gotten themselves a playoff win under their belt now. But again, now the next step and the next level, I just don't see Washington being in the same weight class here as Detroit. So, yeah, I think Detroit certainly can win this game by double digits. The only thing you'd have to worry about here would be any sort of backdoor cover, Ben, late in the game when it's probably already wrapped up by Detroit at home. But again, a 55.5 total.
Yeah.
We haven't seen anything even remotely close to that so far here. It'll be interesting to see if Washington's offense can go toe-to-toe against this Detroit defense that's getting healthier, and I have my doubts on that.
Yeah, listen, I would agree, Joe, with that statement that you just said. 55.5 feels a little bit high, as it was for that regular season finale in the Motor City that featured a total of 56.5 the last time we saw the Lions host the Vikings. It was one of the highest totals we had seen in the NFL since 2019, and of course, it stayed well under. A Detroit defense that is getting healthier, a Detroit defense that has had a full week off, and we know this Lions team has desperately needed it. Might we see David Montgomery return? I'm not sure it really matters. Jahmyr Gibbs in the 3 games without Sonic, because he is Knuckles, was darn good. The Commanders, Joe, since week 4, when the odds started to catch up that maybe Washington was not this pesky underdog, but a true playoff contender, has been an underdog 5 times. They have won outright twice. They have not covered the number 2 times as well. Against the Ravens, twice against the Eagles, and of course on Sunday night in Tampa. The Lions have been a touchdown favorite or greater 6 times this year, 5-1 straight up, a weird week 2 loss to Tampa, and 4-2 against the spread. Now, it's a lot to lay in a playoff game, but I am certainly trusting Detroit to at least control how Saturday night's game plays out in the Motor City.
Yeah, and it's kind of hard not to because, again, experience at home in an environment in which they have been very successful over the last couple of seasons. They're going to have their work cut out for Washington.
11-5 against the spread. That's Detroit as a favorite this year. 12-5 ATS, the best cover team in the NFL. Now to the AFC next. Live right here on the Early Line, a show that lives up to its billing here in this second hour, taking the early line approach to everything that you will see in Divisional Round weekend in the National Football League postseason. One of the best weekends of football each and every year around the NFL. We just previewed our two matchups in the Divisional Round in the NFC. The Lions, the largest favorite of the weekend, 8.5-point spread against the Commanders. Philadelphia in the first game of two on Sunday, a 5.5-point favorite against the Rams. Joe, entering last night at the conclusion of our first game on Sunday, we knew what was at stake in the AFC. We knew what was still out there in that conference, in the final four teams that will play for a conference crown on this side of the league. The Chiefs are the 1 seed. An AFC title runs through Arrowhead once again. In the first game of Divisional Round weekend, 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time on Saturday afternoon. And it ends in the Divisional Round with the marquee and monumental matchup that everybody was hoping for two fan bases that at this current moment are not that fond of one another because of the conversations that have continued throughout this season. Who's the real NFL MVP? Is it Lamar Jackson, looking for his second in a row in 3 in his 6 years as a starter around the National Football League? Or is it Josh Allen for the first time? Joe, before we dive into the individual Divisional Round matchups, let's start with the odds. It is a very close game, as we expect, Sunday evening in Western New York. And thus you see only 30 cents of separation between those two teams, Baltimore and Buffalo, to win the AFC Championship. Plus 210 for the Flock, plus 240 for the Bills. The Texans have a long price. They're over a touchdown underdog in Arrowhead against Kansas City, 16-1. And Joe, the Chiefs remain the favorites as they enter the playoff mix on Saturday afternoon at plus 135. In Kansas City holds home field advantage, of course, throughout, hoping to get back to a Super Bowl, hoping to make history in hunt for that third consecutive Lombardi trophy. How do you make sense of those AFC Championship odds entering divisional weekend?
Well, I mean, it makes sense, right? Because the Chiefs with that number 1 seed really, whether it had been the Chargers or here with the Texans, their path to an AFC championship and maybe another Super Bowl was going to be the easier of the two because we both basically knew the rematch between the Ravens and the Bills was coming. So having said that, Buffalo Bills at a plus 240 price right now to win the championship. The question to me is, do we really think by the time the Ravens and the Bills are done playing, no matter who wins, is there going to be enough in the tank to be able to go to Arrowhead and beat the Chiefs? Because I think the Ravens and Bills is going to be an absolute war. Yeah, I almost feel like now is the time to bet the Chiefs because if they dismantle the Texans and we get the kind of physical game where you think we're going to get with the Ravens and Bills, man, who knows what it's going. I wouldn't be shocked if Kansas City starts to come close to even money or some point, Ben, depending on what happens in that game. So now would be the time to look at Kansas City if you hadn't bet them already. Because to me, everything else between the Ravens and the Bills is a coin flip.
Yeah, and again, I kind of feel the way I feel about these AFC Championship odds now that I did even before the postseason started. You are choosing between Baltimore and Buffalo for who you believe presents the best test to Kansas City in Arrowhead, trying to find that value. I'm still not sure there is value because the marquee matchup on Sunday in Orchard Park is a toss-up. It is a pick-em. So again, you are going to have a team, sure, as probably less than a field goal underdog in Kansas City, but against a Chiefs team that will have an additional day of rest and still have home field advantage. For two organizations and two quarterbacks trying to change a narrative, and for a Chiefs team that has only furthered its narrative and its playoff pedigree. This is year number 7. With Patrick Mahomes as the Chiefs' starting quarterback. In the previous 6, They have played in an AFC championship game all 6 years. Before last year, in the prior 5 seasons, they had hosted said AFC championship game. They have played in 4 Super Bowls. They have won 3 Lombardi trophies, including the last 2 consecutively. Joe, 8 previous back-to-back Super Bowl champions in the history of the NFL. Only 3 have even reached a conference championship game. None of the prior 8 have even played in a Super Bowl for a 3rd consecutive year, let alone win a Lombardi trophy for a 3rd consecutive season. Will history continue its trend, keeping the Chiefs even from an AFC championship game? I'm not so sure. I think KC is there. Will it keep Kansas City from playing in New Orleans for a 3rd consecutive Lombardi trophy? I'm still not so sure. Might it keep the Chiefs from winning a 3rd consecutive Super Bowl? Perhaps. But at this moment, I am really not sure there is great value to bet in the AFC as of right now, even understanding that whether it's Baltimore or Buffalo, whoever plays Kansas City, unless the Texans can pull off a monumental upset in Arrowhead, is going to be less than a field goal underdog. But still, I'm not thinking you're getting good rollover value right now based on what a projected money line price would be for said AFC championship game in KC.
Yeah, no, I mean, you missed the window, Ben. If you were going to bet anybody outside of Kansas City, you needed to do it before the games this past weekend here, where you got much better value at that point, because it's a pick 'em between the Bills and the Ravens here. For the most part, it's going to fluctuate between -1 and a pick 'em, right? Well, to me, it's going to be the same no matter who wins that game. If they're going to Arrowhead, we're probably looking at the same thing, Ben. It's going to be, there's not going to be a lot of value to be rolling anything over one way or the other there. So this is probably as good as you're going to get. Just, you got to figure out, who do you like more to go to Arrowhead? Is it the Bills at home to hold serve, or do the Ravens go 2-0 against Buffalo this year?
Yeah, which is going to be an incredibly interesting conversation that, Joe, let's just dive right in, because it is worth the final 2 minutes of this segment and all 8 minutes of our next segment. It is the marquee matchup, our 4th and final of the divisional round. In Western New York, the Buffalo Bills in the Baltimore Ravens, the 2 seed in the Bills, the 3 seed in the Ravens, a game that we dreamed of and now we get on Sunday evening. A 1.5-point spread in favor of the flock. There you see 18 cents of difference in the money line. There's only 14 currently on the FanDuel Sportsbook. -116, that money line number on the Ravens. -102 on the other side for Buffalo. In a total north of 50 at 51 and a hook. Again, plenty of time on the other side of the break to dive even deeper. But, Joe, let's start with this. Where do you begin your breakdown for this wonderful divisional round matchup between the Ravens and the Bills?
Well, I would caution folks to take whatever it is that you think you learned from week 4 when Baltimore took it to Buffalo in Baltimore, throw it out the window, because these two teams are totally different right now than they were way back there in week 4. So I would go, whatever you think you learned from both of those teams, then I would not let it influence my decision on who's going to win this game, because both teams, especially defensively, are much different looking than they were in week 4.
Much different looking. Baltimore better at limiting points. Buffalo understands how critical it is going to be to try to probably not stop, but slow down the rushing attack of the Ravens. Plenty more next. The finale of divisional round weekend for what will be the final spot in the AFC Championship game between Baltimore and Buffalo in Orchard Park. The Ravens an ever so slight favorite, 1.5 in the spread, -116 on the money line, 14 cents of distinction against the Buffalo Bills with a total of 51 and a hook. Joe, you said it right before the break. You would caution everybody to look back at week number 4, final game of the opening month of this season for both teams, and think that will tell a tale for Sunday evening. Baltimore won big in the Charm City, 35-10, easily covering as a 2.5-point favorite. In that game, the Ravens did what they did on Saturday night to the Steelers, rushing for nearly 300 yards, 271 to be exact, 8 yards per pop against this Buffalo defense. Derrick Henry had 199 yards and a touchdown. Lamar Jackson only had 156 passing yards, but 2 scores, 54 yards on the ground and a touchdown. Meanwhile, for the Bills, they only had 81 rushing yards as a team. But that was way back at the end of September. We are nearing the end of January and the divisional round. So what will be different, Joe, this time around on Sunday evening in Orchard Park?
Well, one of the biggest things is a venue change. We're not in Baltimore anymore, and we don't necessarily know what the weather is going to be like or even pretend to be like come January 19th. This time of year, it could be, 9 feet of snow, Ben, by the time we get to kickoff there. There could be a ton of wind. So I'd caution folks here that what we got in week 4 in Baltimore, we also got against a Bills defense that was really banged up early on in the year. Of course, their captain, Matt Milano, there was not available to them. He was still working his way back there. We weren't sure Von Miller was going to be in good enough shape to be able to start making a difference for this Buffalo team. And, well, they have figured some things out defensively, to say the least there. And we just saw that on display against Denver. I do think this is going to have a different feel. And listen, if Baltimore can go into Orchard Park and run for, over close to 300 yards, Ben, like they did the first go around. I mean, if Derrick Henry runs for 200 yards, Baltimore's winning the game. But something tells me that I don't think that is going to happen in this one. And I also don't think Josh Allen, who was held to 180 yards, 16 of 29 passing, and just 81 yards on 23 carries, the Bills rushed. I think all of that thrown out the window. I do think this is going to be a much more balanced game for both these teams. I ultimately think it's going to come down to who has the ball last. And we have seen both of these teams do some good things against teams not named Kansas City in this spot. So ultimately, I think, Ben, who's got that ball last with an opportunity to get in field goal range, and which kicker do we trust more?
Both have had their struggles. Tyler Bass last year in the postseason. Justin Tucker, it wasn't a story until it was. Certainly this year throughout the entirety of the regular season. If the game lives up to what the odds anticipate, we are in for an all-timer, an instant classic. We're talking a couple of cents of difference on the money line, a toss-up in what we expect to be a high-scoring game. Joe, to your question about weather in Western New York on Sunday, not overly terrible by their standards in mid to late January, but cold. A low of 9 degrees with winds 10 to 15 miles per hour. It's probably going to feel a little bit colder than that of 9 as well. Some snow earlier in the week, maybe a dusting throughout the weekend, but nothing overwhelming by any means there in Buffalo. As we look at this game, there are so many storylines to be had for both franchises, for both quarterbacks. Lamar Jackson trying to turn around the narrative of a lack of playoff success. Now 3-4, but he has never played in a Super Bowl. Neither has Josh Allen. The Bills have won the AFC East now for a 5th consecutive season. They have won their first playoff game during Wild Card Weekend all 5 years, but in the last 3 seasons, they've been ousted in the divisional round. 3 of the previous 4 years, they've been ousted by the Chiefs. Will they have an opportunity to slay their playoff dragon a week following in a potential AFC championship matchup? And then there is the individual quarterback comparison, not just for Sunday, but for this season, Joe. And who is going to win NFL MVP? Josh Allen closed as a minus money favorite at the end of the regular season. And then late last week, Lamar Jackson was named first team AP All-Pro quarterback. Very rarely have we seen a guy finish second team All-Pro and win the MVP hardware. There is all of that, Joe, and two dueling fan bases that have tried to bolster up a campaign for their respective signal caller, now facing off for a spot in a conference championship game on Sunday. Again, game is good as you could hope for. Storylines and narrative as good as you could hope for as well.
And let's not also ignore the fact that from a coaching perspective here, this game could be detrimental to the future of the Buffalo head coach as opposed to the Baltimore Ravens head coach. If Baltimore don't win this game, I don't think we're going to be talking about removing Harbaugh, but I can promise you, if they fall short here, Buffalo, the pitchforks will be out, Ben, in big time fashion.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it, right? There will be some conversation about the ceiling elevated in Western New York by Sean McDermott, perhaps maybe with Lamar Jackson and John Harbaugh. The loser is going to get a little bit of a storm, per se, come Monday. Here are the props for the quarterbacks. Lamar Jackson, clean and efficient against Pittsburgh, had, I think, 81 yards on the ground, something ridiculous on Saturday night. Josh Allen did a little bit of everything. More than 270 yards, 2 passing touchdowns for the Bills, and nearly 50 on the ground. James Cook has stepped up his game as well, although the king awaits on the other side. That is Derrick Henry. The first game of the divisional round, that would be in Arrowhead on Saturday afternoon. Next. The first game of 4 for the divisional round of the 2024 National Football League postseason. It's the Chiefs and the Texans on Saturday afternoon in Arrowhead, a 4:30 p.m. Eastern time kick, something Houston is all too familiar with. Inside Arrowhead Stadium, a playoff atmosphere that Kansas City well understands. After a week off, earning the 1 seed and a bye, the Chiefs are greater than a touchdown favorite at home against the Houston Texans, with the lowest total throughout the entirety of this second round of the postseason, only at 41.5. Joe, the Texans, as they did a season ago, went outright as a 2.5-point home underdog throughout Wild Card Weekend to earn this spot in the AFC Divisional Round. I think the natural question is, can the Texans keep this game within margin? And if so, is there a realistic path that Houston might be able to play spoiler and upset the 2-time reigning Super Bowl champs?
Yeah, no. Houston, to me, even in a 20-point win against the Chargers, at some point, Stroud in the offense, if you believe they're going to have any shot at this, you have to believe that offensively they can finally figure it out and be able to run the ball, be able to protect Stroud, and be able to take some shots down the field. And yes, they have been decimated, that receiving core, by injuries, but now they've become so reliant on Nico Collins. It's ridiculous. And any quality defense they're going to have their hands full. And there is no better one than coming into this game at Arrowhead with Kansas City. And listen, you're not turning Patrick Mahomes over 4 times. He is not Justin Herbert here. This is a team this isn't even one of the best Chiefs teams that we've seen, and yet they're still 15-2 either way here, Ben. And that tells you everything you need to know. Plus, they're 2 home wins away from a shot at NFL history and a possible 3rd championship in a row. Extra time to prepare for Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. And they finally look like, they've been able to figure out how to use Xavier Worthy, how to use Isaiah Pacheco, DeAndre Hopkins, the list goes on. This is what the Chiefs is all about. This would be like betting against Tom Brady in this spot here for over a decade. How well did that work out for people? Waiting for Brady to fail. It ain't happening with Mahomes against this Houston team either. Great defense, but the defense is not going to be enough to get you to go to Arrowhead and beat Patrick Mahomes. I think this is probably the blowout of the weekend.
Listen, the Texans have been great defensively, but as Joe mentioned, so too has Kansas City. I think one of the more underrated storylines entering the regular season finale weekend because we knew the Chiefs were playing all of their reserves in Denver. Jalen Watson, a guy injured for most of this year for the Chiefs, back in the secondary. When Watson is healthy, alongside Trent McDuffie, who was an all-pro cornerback once again this year, one of the more lethal duos at the cornerback spots in the NFL. So the Chiefs getting healthier there. We know the Chiefs are healthier offensively. Isaiah Pacheco back. Hollywood Brown is back. Xavier Worthy is more involved. And they had a week to prepare and figure all of this out. And we know how good Andy Reid is off a bye, regular season or postseason. Joe, the Chiefs have the benefit of the doubt. They have the playoff pedigree. We mentioned the history that Kansas City is seeking. With 2 wins, Kansas City would make history even if they come up short in a Super Bowl, becoming the only 2-time reigning Super Bowl champ to even play in a 3rd Super Bowl game. Now, as for the spread, that's where this game could be interesting. Do we believe the Texans can win outright? I'm not sure you're going to find many people that believe Houston actually has that opportunity. Do we believe Houston can keep this game within margin? Perhaps. With C.J. Stroud as the starter since the beginning of his rookie season, the Texans, including a wild card outright underdog win against the Chargers, are 11-7 against the spread as an underdog, 8 outright wins. The Chiefs, we know the margins of which they have skirted by this year. They are 0-5 against the spread, Joe Raineri, as more than a touchdown favorite this year. More than a touchdown favorite. They have not covered a number. And for a Chiefs team that has only played 7 games out of 17 in total to the over this season, 3 of their 7 did happen in games where KC was laying more than 7 points. What a divisional round it is going to be, and plenty more previews throughout this week on Sports Grid. Hour 3, though, next. Welcome to hour number 3, our 3rd and final, live right here on the early line on Sports Grid. He is Joe. I am Ben. In this 3rd hour, a ton of conversation around both the association and college basketball on what is going to be a wonderful Tuesday night in the sport. This year in college hoops, it feels like each and every Tuesday, marquee matchups dot the docket, certainly in the SEC. That is what happens when you basically have half of the AP top 25 in one league. We will also live up to the billing of the early line as we did in hour 2 by looking at the divisional round matchups here in hour 3 by taking that early look. Now less than a week away from a college football playoff national championship game next Monday night in Atlanta, Georgia, inside Mercedes-Benz Stadium between Ohio State and Notre Dame. And some more college football, but perhaps NFL conversations around a coaching carousel that now will feature the Dallas Cowboys. Plenty to get to here, Joe, in this 3rd hour.
Yeah, and a lot of very intriguing storylines still with the NFL heading into the divisional round, but it just keeps getting real interesting with the NFL franchises that need head coaches and maybe a GM or 2 here, Ben. I think the next couple of weeks going to be a whole lot of fun for some fan bases.
So early yesterday morning, we had 6 head coaching vacancies. Now make that 5 after the full introduction of Mike Vrabel as New England's new head coach. That move by the Patriots, the first to fill a vacancy, it's basically what we expected. And then we got back up to 6 vacancies in terms of NFL head coaching jobs as the Cowboys and Mike McCarthy could not come to terms on a new deal. They part ways. Boom. The Dallas Cowboys now need a new head coach for 2025. Who would be it? Kellen Moore, former offensive coordinator in Big D, former Cowboys backup quarterback, now a successful OC in Philadelphia. Who would Jerry Jones trust? What? Late last night, reports that Deion Sanders, former Cowboy, has been reached out to by Jerry Jones, and might both sides have mutual interest? Well, does it make sense? And might it actually happen? That was the question for all of you in Fade the Public. At Sports Grid on Twitter, does Deion Sanders make sense as the Cowboys' next head coach? Your 4 options. Yes, for both parties. No, not for Dallas. No, not for Deion. No, it makes 0 sense for either party involved. Again, at Sports Grid on Twitter. Joe, a pretty close toss-up here between our 2 options at top and bottom. Yes, it would make sense for both. No, it would not make sense for either side. Which way, Joe Raineri, did you vote in the Fade the Public poll?
Yeah, I don't think it makes sense for either side in any way, shape, or form here. I think if Deion, and he has said it, was ever going to go to the NFL, and you brought it up earlier, Ben, we're talking about a guy that needs to be the story, needs to be in control, needs to be the king. And one place he will always be able to do that, Ben, is in the college ranks. He will never do that in the NFL. And the only way I ever see him, and he has said that he makes the jump to the NFL, it's if he can coach his kids. He's got a quarterback and he's got a defensive back that are going to enter the draft this year. The Cowboys pick 12th. I don't think they're going to be in a position to take either of his kids. So I don't think it makes any sense for him to go to a place in which you have a owner with the biggest ego who will not relinquish anything and just screwed up the entire new coaching search by waiting to eventually let Mike McCarthy walk.
Yes, when he was, in fact, a lame duck head coach with an expiring contract that is officially over today. Mike McCarthy, a free agent now and maybe a hot commodity on the market. Yep. I'm sure he's actually pleasantly happy or pleased, I guess I would just use the term, that he is no longer under the watchful eye of Jerry Jones. Joe, I voted for neither. It would make sense for neither of these two sides in terms of a potential partnership, much like you, because you have two guys that want to have the biggest ego in the room, that often deserve, at least in my estimation, to have that biggest ego, to have all of the eyeballs, to have all of the notoriety and attention. Jerry Jones and Deion Sanders. Those two things do not often coexist unless one steps back. And I don't believe that Prime is going to allow Jerry Jones to say, Deion, we want this guy as your left tackle. We are only going to spend this amount on linebackers. I don't think that's how Deion Sanders would build his organization or program. Certainly not how he has done things, kind of out on the upper threshold of how things have been done in a little bit of a cutting-edge way, if you will, in college football. I don't think he wants to give up organizational control at all. And I don't think Jerry Jones is going to do what he did in the late 80s and early 90s when either it was, why am I blanking on his name? Who's the guy on the pregame show? Help me.
Troy Aikman.
Former Cowboys head coach. No.
Troy
Aikman
is who you're thinking.
Jimmy Johnson. Thank you.
Oh, there you go.
Jerry Johnson. That didn't work out. Jimmy Johnson or even Barry Switzer, who was there the last time they won a Lombardi Trophy. Jerry Jones's persona now far too large in 2024 as it was compared to 1994 or even 1995. I don't think this makes sense for either party. I do not believe that the Dallas job is a desirable one because of all of the control that Jerry Jones now must have in terms of this organization. I don't think it is good for Deion Sanders. I'm not sure he would see great success in Dallas. I think he is building something successful at Colorado and should remain in Boulder for the time being. I do believe the Cowboys will ultimately end up hiring somebody akin to a Kellen Moore, who has familiarity with how this franchise is run at the Star, and I think would be somewhat of a yes man in his first head coaching job in terms of what Jerry Jones wants to do. That's how I see the Cowboys head coaching search play out. I would be surprised, truthfully. I'm not surprised that it's a headline. I'm not surprised we're talking about it, that Deion Sanders has been contacted by his former boss in Jerry Jones. I would be genuinely surprised if Deion Sanders actually ends up becoming the Cowboys' next head coach.
I'd be shocked. I really would be shocked. Although, I guess at this point, we should be shocked by nothing that centers around this Dallas Cowboys organization. It also wouldn't shock me if Mike McCarthy goes to the Jets and reunites with Aaron Rodgers. I'll just throw it out there. I'll just throw it out there.
Yeah. I don't know if they like each other all that much, at least based
They
on
hate
the
each
reports
other.
from their ending time in Green Bay. I also don't know if Aaron Rodgers is going to be in New York. I think it's more likely Mike McCarthy is there with the Jets in 2025. There's been a lot of speculation that Mike McCarthy is actually a desirable head coach. He's been great offensively. He understands how to build up young quarterbacks, that maybe he would make some sense in Chicago. The Bears did seek permission to interview him before his contract is now through in Dallas. I think it makes some sense. We'll see how it plays out in the Windy City and what is next for Mike McCarthy. Again, before Mike McCarthy and probably after Mike McCarthy, the Cowboys still have the same question to answer. Sure, regular season success, but not Super Bowl success. Not playoff success. Mike McCarthy was the sixth head coach since Barry Switzer won Dallas its final Lombardi trophy back in 1995. And all six of those head coaches unable to get back to a Super Bowl, heck, even an NFC championship game.